Okay, I'm Ed Dene. I'm starting the experiment, a nickel of nickel 2 compounds. And so the first part of this experiment is to make up an EDTA solution, which is ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid, which is why we say EDTA. Okay, so we're going to weigh out some EDTA. It says to weigh out between 1.01 and 1.03 grams of EDTA. So I'm going to put the weigh boat onto the balance here. I'm going to zero that out. And I've got a little deal here of EDTA. It's a nice white solid. Okay, so I'm going to weigh out just over 1 gram. Kind of sticks a little bit. That's close enough. A little over, but we'll be okay with that. The air shield back on. And so that's my weight of EDTA, 1.049 grams. Okay, and so now we've got to dissolve that, and we want to know the concentration accurately, so we're going to use a volumetric flask to measure the volume. It's a 100 ml volumetric flask, so I got to get all the solid from the weigh boat into the volumetric flask and dissolve it with water. Okay, so the easiest thing to do is you want to put a little bit of water in your flask. Okay, so you have a little bit of water in there. And then I have to get all the solid in there. Now, the easiest way to do that, the reason we use a plastic weigh boat is because you can bend this and make kind of a funnel here, and it'll go right down into there, and you can get all the solid. It does take a little bit. In there, but it will all go down. Okay, that gets the majority of the solid, but there's still residue on the weigh boat. I don't know if you can see it, there's some white particles there on the weigh boat. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my squirt bottle to rinse all of the weigh boat down into there. Okay, so I'm going to try to hold it here so that you can see. We're just going to rinse the weigh boat down into the flask. Okay, and we check, make sure we got everything. And so all the solid got transferred into the flask. And now I'm just going to rinse the neck down. And it says to have about 50 milliliters of water in there, so I'm going to add a little bit more. And then it says it's going to you swirl it to get it all to dissolve. Now, unfortunately, EDTA does take a little bit to dissolve, so you don't want to fill it to the neck. You want to get it to dissolve first, then we're going to bring it up to the line to get to the amount. So you just got to swirl it a little bit. Okay, so the solid has all dissolved in our EDTA. Okay, and so now what we need to do is we need to bring the liquid level up to the line so we know that we have exactly 100 milliliters and we can calculate the concentration. Okay, so you can use your squirt bottle to, get relatively close to the line, but because if you go over, you start over, when you get close, you want to use a transfer pipette just to get it to the line. And of course, you also want to do it read the value at eye level. Bottom of the meniscus, right on the line. Trouble seeing it. Okay. All right. And then once I got it to the line, put the cover on it, And it says to invert it 15 to 20 times to mix. Okay, so that's probably been 15 or more times. All right, so now we have our EDTA solution. Okay, so now we got to get our burette ready. And our burette is this long tube of glass that has a stopcock on one end. Okay, and so first though, I've got to make sure that the burette is clean. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the stopcock. So crosswise means it's stopped. And I'm going to add some water to my burette, and I'm going to try to make sure that it kind of sheets down the inside. And if it was dirty, you'd see all little drops of water sticking all over to it, and we'd have to clean it with some soap and water. But it looks like it's pretty well clean. Now I just have to check the tip, so I'm just going to let some out here into this beaker. Okay, that's coming out really well. All right, so I'm just going to dump the rest of the water out as we can. All right, so the burette is clean. I'm going to close that back off. But now, in my burette, I still have a little bit of water in here because you can never pour out all the water. And if I'm going to add my EDTA solution to the burette, if this water is in here, that's going to change the concentration. So what I have to do is I have to rinse the burette with some of my EDTA solution, throw that out before I fill with the EDTA solution, so I know what the concentration will be. So just for ease of sake, these volumetric flasks are not great for pouring. I'm going to go ahead and pour some of my EDTA into this other beaker here. And then I'm going to fill the burette. Now, to fill the burette out of a beaker, what we want to do is we want to use one of these little burette funnels, okay? So the burette funnel will fit right on top of there. The other thing is, you notice I'm filling it with it below eye level. Now EDTA is not all that hazardous, but if you're filling it with acid or base, you don't want to pour it above your eyes because then it can get into your eyes. So we're going to fill this. Now we're only going to put a little bit in here because again, we're just rinsing it. Second thing, always double check that the stopcock is closed so you don't pour stuff onto your feet. You only have to do that once. And I have a story about that, but that's for another time. Okay, so I'm just going to pour some in here. Take my funnel out. Okay, so you can see I have just a little bit in here. And what I'm going to do is into my waste beaker, I'm going to kind of tip this down so I coat the whole inside of my burette with EDTA back and forth a little bit. Right. Okay, so I'm just trying to rinse the inside of it there with EDTA. All right. And then I want to also rinse out the tip, but I don't quite have enough, so I need to have a little bit more in there to rinse out the tip. You just have to have enough in there so it pushes the air bubble out of the tip. Okay, so I'm just rinse the tip out. All right. So all of this EDTA, I'm just going to discard, as the concentration was changed by the little bit of water that was in there. All right. So now the only thing that's left in here is essentially EDTA. The same solution that I'm filling with. So now I can go ahead and fill my burette with EDTA. More. Okay, I'm filling it a little bit above the 0 mark. Right at the, right at the 0 or a little above, because I still have an air bubble in the tip, so I'm going to let that out into the waste, get the air all out of there. All right, so now my burette is full of EDTA, and I'm ready to go. So now I'm going to set my burette in my burette clamp, okay, like so, and it's over top of a stir bar with a stir plate. And so once I get my sample prepped, that'll go underneath here, and I'll be able to read the burette and be ready to go. So we're ready to weigh out our sample. We're having nickel unknowns in this experiment, so there are 5 different unknowns, and they're color-coded. We are going to use unknown blue for this video demonstration. Okay, so it says to weigh out 0.11 grams. If you look at the solid, okay, you can get the color of the solid here, because that's one of the things that you're supposed to note. Okay, but its unknown color code is the blue color code. All right, so we're going to put the weigh boat onto the balance here and 0 that out. Okay, we're supposed to weigh out 0.11 grams. Solid. So we went a little bit over, but that's okay. So you can see how much that is. It's not very much. And let me put the air shield on, and then we can get a weight. Okay, so that's 0.139 grams. Okay, so we have our sample here, and we're going to transfer it into a 250 milliliter Erlenmeyer flask. Okay, so again, I'm going to kind of fold that over, get the solid down in there, and I'm just going to rinse the solid in with a little bit of water. Rinse the weigh boat. And then it says to add 3 milliliters of ammonium hydroxide. Okay, so I've dissolved it up, and you can see it's a nice green and a little bit of a greenish color. Okay, that's nickel dissolved in the water. Okay, might need a white background, might help. All right, so now I'm going to add the ammonium hydroxide, and then I'm going to add water. And of course, we're doing this in the hood because ammonium hydroxide has a very strong odor. It's what's in smelling salts and stuff. So, okay, so we add that. Okay, and you can see it turned it a blue color. And then we're going to add the 100 milliliters of water. That's just basically to dilute it. It doesn't need to be an exact amount. Okay, we want to dilute it, but not too much. So we just gave you an amount of water. Okay, and so our sample is ready, except for one very important detail. We need the indicator, okay, to tell us when the titration is going to be over. And to do that, it says to add a small amount of Murexide or an indicator or a tablet. And we got a deal of tablets here, and I'm just going to pour, hopefully, just one here out onto the cap. And then I'm going to drop, it's okay, can you see the tablet there? And then I'm going to just drop the tablet in. Okay? And as you see the tablet, right where the tablet is, maybe you could
just hold it, just put it down.
Yeah, you can see where it's kind of turning a gold color. Okay, and so we just need to get that to dissolve, and so we'll come back in when we get that to dissolve, that tablet. Okay, so we have our solution here, and the tablet has all dissolved, and we have to add one more thing to this, which is our stir bar. Of course, we could have added that and used it to help dissolve, but you don't just drop a stir bar in because you can break the glassware that way. Usually you want to let it slide in along the side, and then we're going to put it on our stir plate. I'm just going to get the red out of the way, and we'll need to turn that and plug that in. thank you to the camera person for plugging in my stir plate. And we'll turn that on. Get that stirring. Okay. All right, so now before we go ahead and get started, we need to read the initial reading on the burette. Okay, so when you're reading a burette, if you notice, there are lines, the long lines are at every milliliter, okay? And then halfway in between there's a longer line, that's at 0.5. And then the smallest lines that are there are at every 0.1 milliliter. So since the lines are at every 0.1 milliliter, you can guesstimate or estimate in between those lines, so you can read to 2 places past the decimal. So if you're looking at this, you want to read at the bottom of the curved area, which is called the meniscus. Now, sometimes it's nice to have a kind of a white background behind it. It might be a little easier to see. Okay. See if you can read off what the bottom of that is. And I would say, I've read it earlier, and it's about 1.09 milliliters. Okay, or 1.10, somewhere along those lines. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and titrate this. And so we're going to go ahead, and we know that it's going to take at least a little bit, so we can start out going a little bit here. But we don't want to overshoot it. And what we're looking for is a purple endpoint. So sometimes you can get this to go at, you can get the stopcock to go, you can get a little bit of drops of drop, and we may have overshot it a little bit there, but that is definitely a purple color, okay, because we were going kind of fast, so we may have overshot it by a little bit. If you're really slow, you can get it to within a drop. Okay, so then when we're done, we need to record the final volume. So again, you want to read the bottom of the meniscus here to 2 decimal places. So